The words cut deep. You're nothing but a burden now. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but it was the last. Diana, my daughter, my flesh and blood, said it like it was nothing, as if years of sacrifices meant nothing. I had given everything for them, my time, my dreams, my identity. But now, at 55, I realized something. I was no longer invisible. And when she came to me, expecting me to fix her messes, she'd see a different woman standing in the doorway, one who had learned to live for herself, no one else. It was time to let go. This was my story. Now, I'm curious, where in the world are you joining us from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for all the latest updates. The words hit like a slap across my face. You're nothing but the maid around here. It was the last straw. I stood frozen in the kitchen, knife in hand, the sound of clattering dishes fading into the background. Sophia's words echoed in my head, sharp and cold. I had spent years sacrificing my time, my energy, my life for this family. Cooking, cleaning, raising the kids while they both worked, all without a word of thanks. But now, I was nothing more than the maid. Dinner was still on the table, the kids happily chatting, unaware of the storm brewing, just beneath the surface. Daniel, sitting at the head of the table, didn't say a word. He never did when Sophia spoke to me like that. He sat there, silent, as though I didn't even exist. I set the knife down, my hands shaking slightly, as I turned off the stove. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at the roast chicken, the mashed potatoes. It all seemed so pointless. I'd spent so many years running their household, doing everything for them, and yet I had never felt more invisible. The words from Sophia stung, but it wasn't just the insult that hurt. It was the years of being overlooked. The years of giving, with nothing in return. I walked away from the kitchen, my mind racing. Every sacrifice, every moment of my life spent catering to their needs, it all came crashing down in one hurtful sentence, and the silence from Daniel, the one person who should have had my back, cut deeper than anything else. He didn't defend me. He never did. As I stood in the hallway, the reality of the situation hit me. I was done. Done being invisible. Done being taken for granted. The house, the mortgage, the kids, it all belonged to them now. I didn't want to be their maid anymore. I didn't want to be anyone's doormat. I didn't even think about it. I walked straight to my coat, grabbed the keys to the house, and walked back into the dining room. The conversation had died down, and the kids were still laughing at something. But Sophia's eyes flicked to me as I approached, her casual demeanor shifting. When she saw the look on my face, she knew. I took the keys out of my pocket and held them out to her. For a moment I thought she might say something, beg me to stay, or offer an apology. But nothing came, just silence. "The house is yours now," I said, my voice steady. "You can take care of everything yourself." Sophia's face paled. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She stared at the keys in my hand, almost as if she couldn't believe it. But I didn't wait for her to say anything. I looked at Daniel, expecting some kind of reaction, some sign that he cared. But he just sat there, his eyes avoiding mine, like he always did when it came to me, his mother. It was clear, I had been invisible for so long, and now I was leaving, and no one cared. I turned, the keys heavy in my hand. I walked out the door, my heart pounding with every step. The night air hit my skin, and for the first time in years, I felt something new. Freedom. It wasn't just the physical act of walking out, it was the weight that lifted off my shoulder. I wasn't going to be the maid anymore. I wasn't going to be ignored or disrespected. I was finally standing up for myself. The door clicked shut behind me, and as I stood on the steps, I realized something. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel scared. I felt alive. I didn't look back as I walked away. I thought leaving would bring peace, but it only brought more chaos. I stood at the window, staring out at the unfamiliar horizon. The air felt different, lighter, but also uncertain. The house was quiet now. No children's laughter or dishes clattering in the background. It was just me, and yet the silence was suffocating. Grace had called a few hours after I'd walked out. She'd listened, offered support, but also told me that I needed to give myself time to breathe, to figure out who I was without the constant weight of everyone else's expectations on my shoulders. She was right, but her words didn't bring the clarity I was looking for. I hadn't been outside the role of caretaker for years, maybe even decades. My whole life had been defined by my family, by Sophia and Daniel, by the kids, and now that I had walked away, I felt empty. No one needed me. Not in the same way, not with the same urgency. I paced the living room, feeling the heavy burden of indecision settle on me again. I had thought that leaving would bring peace. I'd imagined stepping out into the world, reclaiming the woman I used to be, but all I felt now was the absence of everything I'd ever known. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "We can't do this without you." I stared at the words, my heart sinking. Was this an apology? A plea for me to come back? I couldn't tell, but it hit me harder than I'd expected. They needed me. After Sophia's words, after the years of being invisible, they were asking me to come back. I sat down on the couch, my hands trembling as I put the phone down. I felt the weight of everything pulling at me. My love for them, the guilt of leaving them to struggle, and the realization that I didn't know how to find balance. I had been a caretaker for so long that I wasn't sure who I was outside of that role. As I stared at the phone, Emily's voice echoed in my mind. "Focus on your happiness, Mom." She had been the one to remind me that I deserved more than just sacrifice, that I wasn't a martyr. She had always seen me as more than just a mother or grandmother. She had encouraged me to find the person I had been before all of this. But could I really turn my back on them? Could I let them struggle without me? The kids needed help. Sophia was overwhelmed, and Daniel hadn't lifted a finger to help me in years. He had always relied on me, always expected me to make it work, and now when things were falling apart, they wanted me back. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to quiet the chaos in my mind. For the first time, I wasn't acting out of obligation. I wasn't the maid anymore. But was that enough? Could I really build a new life without feeling guilty for leaving them behind? I walked into the kitchen, my hands resting on the cool granite counter, and let my mind wander to the future. Could I let go of the role I had played for so long? Was it possible to be a part of their lives again, on my terms, or would I forever be trapped in the same old patterns? Then another message popped up on my phone. This time it was from Sophia. "I'm sorry, please come home. The house, the kids, we need you." I felt a pang of something, guilt, regret, or maybe just the weight of being needed. But something inside me, something I couldn't ignore, pushed back. Was I really willing to give everything up again? To slip back into the life where my needs always came last? The phone buzzed once more, this time with a text from Emily. "Mom, you have to do what's best for you. Please don't let them guilt you into going back. You've worked so hard for this freedom." I sat on the couch, torn between the two worlds, between the love I felt for my family, and the love I was starting to feel for myself. It wasn't just about the house, the mortgage or the kids. It was about reclaiming my identity, my happiness. It was about choosing me for the first time in years. The phone buzzed again, and I knew it was Daniel. I stared at it, feeling the pull between them, and the pull toward my own future. Could I walk away again? Or was it time to make a choice? My fingers hovered over the screen, uncertainty consuming me. The call came when I least expected it. "You're behind on the mortgage. If the payment isn't made by tomorrow, you'll be forced to sell the house." The words hit me like a punch. I had known things weren't perfect, but this was more than I had bargained for. Sophia, the one I'd spent years sacrificing for, had let the mortgage fall behind, and now the house was at risk. I'd been managing everything, cooking, cleaning, raising the kids, but I never thought the financial burden would fall on me too. I had taken on so much for them, yet I had never been asked if I was okay with it. They had let me do it all without once thinking about what it was costing me. Sophia hadn't even warned me that the bills were piling up. I had been blind to it, or maybe I just didn't want to see it. I stared at the phone in disbelief. The house that had been my home for years, the place where I'd poured my heart and soul into keeping it together, was now on the brink of being taken away. The weight of it all crushed me, and the worst part was that it wasn't even my mess. I needed to tell Daniel, but I already knew what he'd say. He'd apologize, promise to fix things, and then do nothing. I had seen it before. Over and over. I was the one who took care of everything, and it was always me picking up the piece. I walked to the kitchen, my thoughts swirling, hands shaking as I tried to steady myself. How had I let it get to this point? My mind raced through the years of sacrifices, the times I had bent over backward to make sure they were okay, all while I was invisible, my needs pushed aside, and now the house was about to slip through my fingers because of Sophia's neglect. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep holding their world together while mine was falling apart. I grabbed my phone and sent a quick message to Daniel, my fingers moving without thinking. I'm not coming back. This is your problem now. It was done. The words left my hands faster than I could process them, and yet it felt I wasn't going back to that life, to being invisible again. They had to figure it out on their own. But as soon as I hit send, a wave of guilt hit me. Could I really leave them to fend for themselves? They were but every time I stepped in, it was like I was giving them an excuse to stay comfortable, to rely on me. Was it my responsibility to keep cleaning up their mess? The silence of the house pressed down on me, heavy and unfamiliar. Then a message from Sophia popped up. I'm sorry. Please come home. The house, the kids. We need you. I stared at it, my heart caught in my throat. It wasn't the first apology, but this time I wasn't sure it meant anything. Had she learned anything? Or was it just another way to pull me back into the same old pattern? It was Emily, my daughter. Mom, you have to do what's best for you. Please don't let them guilt you into coming back. You've worked so hard for this freedom. Her words hit me hard. Was this my chance to finally live for myself? To stop being the one everyone relied on without ever really showing me respect? I sat back down, my thoughts spinning. Daniel and Sophia, did I really want to go back to being their crutch? To keep being invisible in my own life? Or was this the moment I needed to choose me for the first? Another message came through from Daniel, a simple line. We can't do this without you. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply. I felt torn, unsure if my love for them would drag me back into a life where I gave and gave, but was never truly seen. The house, the mortgage, the kids, all of it was their responsibility now. I had taken on too much for too long, and it wasn't my burden to bear anymore. But could I really walk away, knowing they were struggling? I glanced at the phone one more time, knowing that whatever I chose, the decision had to come from a place of strength, not guilt. The weight of the choice loomed over me, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't know what came next. But whatever it was, I was ready to face it. The call came when I least expected it. You're behind on the mortgage. If the payment isn't made by tomorrow, you'll be forced to sell the house. The words hit me like a punch. I had been managing everything for years, cooking, cleaning, raising the kids. But the financial burden had fallen on me too, and now Sophia's neglect had pushed it to the brink of losing everything. I stared at the phone, disbelief washing over me. The house, the one I had worked so hard to maintain, was now at risk. How had it come to this? I had been blindsided by the reality of their situation. I had taken on so much, but never once did they ask if I was okay with it. Sophia hadn't even warned me that the mortgage was falling behind. It was her mess, but I had been the one left to deal with it. I needed to tell Daniel, but I already knew what he'd say. He would apologize, promise to fix it, and then do nothing. He had always relied on me, and it had gotten to the point where I was the one picking up the pieces, yet no one noticed. I walked to the kitchen, my hands trembling as the weight of the situation sunk in. How had I let it get to this point? Years of sacrifices, years of bending over backward to meet their needs. And now the house was about to slip away. Because of Sophia's irresponsibility, I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep holding their world together while mine was falling apart. I grabbed my phone and typed a quick message to Daniel. I'm not coming back. This is your problem now. It was done. The words left my hands faster than I could process them. For the first time, I wasn't going to be invisible. They had to figure it out on their own. But as soon as I hit send, guilt washed over me. Could I really leave them to fend for themselves? They were family after all. But every time I stepped in, it was like I was giving them an excuse to stay comfortable, to rely on me. Was it my responsibility to keep cleaning up their mess? Then Sophia's message came through. I'm sorry. Please come home. The house, the kids, we need you. I stared at the screen, my heart in my throat. It wasn't the first apology, but this time I wasn't sure if it meant anything. Had she learned anything? Or was it just another attempt to pull me back into the same old pattern? Another message from Emily, my daughter, popped up. Mom, you have to do what's best for you. Please don't let them guilt you into coming back. You've worked so hard for this freedom. Her words rang in my ears. Could I really walk away? Could I finally stop being the one everyone rely on without ever showing me respect? Was this my chance to live for myself? The phone buzzed again. This time it was Daniel. We can't do this without you. I stared at the message, feeling torn. Should I go back to the life where I was taken for granted? Or was this the moment I had to choose me for the first time in years? The house, the mortgage, the kids, it wasn't my burden anymore. I had done enough. But could I really walk away, knowing they were struggling? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, the decision was mine to make. Another message came through from Grace, reminding me of the freedom I had been searching for. She was right. I had spent so many years carrying their burdens. It was time to reclaim my life. But as the messages piled up, I felt a lingering doubt. Could I really let them go? The silence in the room felt heavy, but I was finally starting to realize that I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to play the role of the fixer. I stared at the phone one last time, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. This was my moment, one I couldn't let slip away. But would I really walk away, or was I doomed to fall back into the same cycle? With shaking hands, I put the phone down. The road ahead wasn't clear, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone take control of my future. I realized I couldn't keep being the one who fixed everything. I had to let go, no matter how hard it was. The words echoed in my head as I stood by the window, the silence around me, amplifying the weight of the decision I was facing. The house was quiet, too quiet. The kids were no longer running through the hallways, the constant chatter from the kitchen gone. It had been a few days since I walked out, and the emptiness felt both peaceful and suffocating at the same time. Sophia's words still rang in my mind, accusing me of being selfish. You can't just leave us to struggle. What about the kids? What about the house? But the truth was, I had been the one holding everything together for years. I had spent my life catering to their needs, while pushing my own aside. And now they needed me again to clean up their mess. Daniel hadn't said much. He never did. Always caught between me and Sophia, never able to make a decision. The silence from him was more telling than any words he could have spoken. He expected me to come back and fix things, just like I always did. But this time, I couldn't be their fixer anymore. I thought about Emily's words. Mom, you have to do what's best for you. Please don't let them guilt you into coming back. You've worked so hard for this freedom. Her voice, full of concern and love, stayed with me, reminding me that I had the right to choose myself for the first time in years. I was still uncertain. Was I doing the right thing? Was I abandoning them when they needed me most? They were family after all. But the truth was, every time I stepped in, it only allowed them to remain comfortable in their irresponsibility. I had become so accustomed to living for everyone else, that the idea of living for myself felt foreign and scary. I glanced at my phone, watching the messages rolling. First, Sophia, pleading for me to come back. Please come home. The house, the kids, we need you. Then another message from Emily urging me to stay strong. Mom, don't go back. You deserve this peace. I took a deep breath. My heart ached for them. I loved them, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness. I had spent too many years living for others, and now it was time to live for myself. The phone buzzed again. Daniel, we can't do this without you. Mom? I stared at the words, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to rush back in, to be the savior, to take on their burden again. But another part of me knew that if I did that, I would be giving up everything I had just gained. The freedom to live on my own terms. I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep carrying their weight while mine crumbled. The house, the mortgage, the kids, those were their responsibilities now. I had done enough. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. I sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The road ahead wasn't clear, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone take control of my life again, not even my family. Another message from Grace popped up, reminding me to focus on what I want. It was time to make plans for my future. One where I wasn't just the maid or the caretaker. One where I could start living for myself. As I looked at my phone one last time, I knew that whatever happened, this was my moment. I wasn't going to let guilt or fear pull me back into the same role I had been trapped in for so long. The silence felt different now. It wasn't the emptiness I had feared. It was freedom. I put my phone down, stood up, and walked away from the life that had been holding me back. The future was mine to choose. I realized I couldn't keep being the one who fixed everything. I had to let go, no matter how hard it was. The weight of those words pressed against me as I stood by the window gazing out at the empty street. The silence felt different now. Peaceful but suffocating. I'd left everything behind, yet somehow the emptiness felt more intense than I had imagined. For years I had been the caretaker, the fixer, but no more. I had spent too long sacrificing myself for them. And it was time to Sophia's words echoed in my head. You can't just leave us to struggle. What about the kids? What about the house? She had always depended on me and I had always given in, but not anymore. I couldn't return to that role. It wasn't just about the house. It was about my life. About me finally reclaiming what I had lost for so long. Daniel's silence spoke louder than anything. He never made a decision. He let me carry the weight. Never stepping in. It had become the way of things. I had become the glue that held everything together. And now when things were falling apart, they wanted me to fix it all again. Grace's voice resonated in my mind. This is your time, Margaret. Don't go back. She had been right all along. I couldn't let myself be pulled back into that life, where my happiness came last. I needed to find my own path. One where I wasn't constantly catering to everyone else's needs. The messages started coming. First, Sophia begging me to come back. Please come home. The house, the kid, we need you. The guilt that twisted inside me was familiar, but I could see through it now. It was the same old cycle, her asking and me giving in. Not this time. Then Emily's message appeared. Mom, don't go back. You've worked so hard for this freedom. My heart clenched. Emily understood. She saw the toll it had taken on me. It was time to listen to her. But then came Daniel's message. We can't do this without you, Mom. I stared at it, the pull between my old life and the new one tugging at me. Could I really walk away? Could I let them struggle? The thought of leaving them to face the mess alone gnawed at me, but deep down I knew the answer. They had to face the consequences of their actions. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. I sat on the couch, the phone still in my hand, contemplating my next move. It was strange, not being the one everyone relied on. It felt empowering, but the guilt still lingered, especially when I thought about the kids. Could I really leave them to navigate everything on their own? A knock at the door interrupted my thought. My heart raced as I opened it to find a courier with an envelope from Sophia. The familiar handwriting struck a chord in me. Another letter. I closed the door, holding the letter in my hands. My heart pounded in my chest. It was her final plea, wasn't it? The last attempt to pull me back into the fold. I sat down, looking at the letter, unsure of what to do. The temptation to go back to fix everything was still there. But could I really go back to being the person who was invisible, the one who gave everything with no regard for herself? I placed the letter aside. The decision was mine. I had already made it. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't the kind that crushed me anymore. This time it felt like the beginning of something new, something mine. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out into the uncertain future. But for the first time in years, the uncertainty didn't feel like fear. It felt like freedom. Would I return to them, or would I finally live for myself? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone control my life again. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for anyone but me. It was a thought I held close as I sat by the window, the quiet in the room settling like a heavy blanket. The street outside was calm, but the silence inside felt different now. peaceful, yet unfamiliar. For years I had been the one to hold everything together. Now I was standing on my own, learning to live without the constant need to please others. It was liberating, but terrifying at the same time. I had started a new career. It wasn't much, but it was mine. It gave me a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just cooking, cleaning, and keeping their world running smoothly. I was finally doing something for myself. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. And yet, as I embraced my newfound freedom, I couldn't shake the guilt. Sophia and Daniel had become accustomed to me being there, to me fixing everything. They still needed me. They still called, but now their calls felt different, full of guilt, full of expectation. Please come back. The house, the kids. We need you. I couldn't go back. Not this time. Grace had been my rock, reminding me to stay strong, to keep moving forward. You've worked so hard for this freedom. Don't go back, she would say. And each time, I found the strength to resist I had spent too many years in the background, fixing their problems while ignoring my own needs. It was time to rebuild my life, one that was free from the suffocating weight of responsibility. I started dating again. At first, it felt strange to be seen as more than just a mother, a caretaker. But with every date, I remembered who I was before the demands of family took over. I laughed without guilt, spoke my mind without hesitation, and felt the freedom of being myself again. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had lost, until I began to rediscover it. But as the days passed, I couldn't ignore the calls from Sophia and Daniel. They were struggling without me, and their voices carried the same weight of expectation. It was hard not to feel torn. They were family, and my heart ached, knowing they were struggling. But I had to let go. I couldn't let them manipulate me back into the role I had outgrown. Sophia's calls became more desperate. You can't just leave us, Margaret. The house. The kids. They need you. Another message came from Emily, reminding me to stay strong. Mom, don't go back. You've earned this peace. You deserve this freedom. I took a deep breath and leaned back. I had done enough for them. It was time for them to stand on their own. They were adults, capable of managing their own lives. I wasn't going to be the crutch anymore. But then, the familiar ding of my phone sounded again. It was another message from Sophia. Please, can we try again? I need you. I stared at the screen, my heart heavy. I wanted to help them. I wanted to fix everything. But I knew that if I went back, I would be giving up the one thing I had worked so hard to gain, my freedom. My life had to be my own now. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I being too harsh? Was I being selfish? But then I remembered Grace's words, Emily's encouragement. I wasn't abandoning them. I was giving them the opportunity to stand on their own. I had to stay. I looked at the phone one last time. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. Would I return? No, I had made my choice. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it was mine to walk. And for the first time, I was ready. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for anyone but me. The thought settled in my mind as I stood by the window. The silence in the house, heavier than it should have been. I had spent so many years giving, putting everyone's needs ahead of mine. But now, the quiet felt different, peaceful yet unsettling. I had walked away, and I wasn't sure what was next. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. I had started a new career, something small but fulfilling. It was the first time in years that I was doing something just for me, not as a mother, caretaker, or the family's emotional. Each day brought new challenges, but they were mine. I was finally learning what it meant to live without constantly sacrificing myself. But with this newfound freedom, came the calls, the ones I had been dreading. Sophia asking me to come back. Please, come home. The house, the kids, we need you. I could feel the guilt creeping in just like it always did. But this time, I saw through it. She had always relied on me, and I had always given in. Not anymore. Then came Daniel's message. We can't do this without you, Mom. My heart ached at his word. How many times had I dropped everything to fix their problems? How many times had I been the one to hold it all together? And now they were asking me to come back. Grace's voice echoed in my mind. This is your time, Margaret. Don't go back. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Grace had been my rock throughout this entire process. She understood the toll my old life had taken on me and reminded me that I deserved more. But still, it was hard. The guilt, the love for my family. I wanted to go back. I wanted to help, but something inside me resisted. I had done enough. They had to figure it out without me. I sat down, the weight of the decision heavy. Another message from Sophia popped up. Please, can we try again? I need you. I stared at the screen, unsure. Could I really turn my back on them, especially when they were struggling? But I remembered everything I had worked for, the independence, the peace. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me back into the same role. Not this time. I had to live for myself now. As I pondered my next move, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped as I opened it and found a courier with an envelope from Sophia. A letter. It was a plea. I knew, her final attempt to pull me back into her world. I sat down, the letter unopened. The temptation was real, but as I stared at the envelope, I knew I had already made my decision. I couldn't keep fixing everything. The weight of their struggles wasn't mine to bear. The silence in the house no longer felt suffocating. It felt like freedom, like a new beginning. I wasn't just walking away. I was choosing myself for the first time in years. I placed the letter aside and stood up. The future was unclear, but it was mine to create. Then, the phone buzzed again. I looked at it. Sophia's name flashing on the screen. For a moment I hesitated, but the answer was already inside me. I wasn't going back. I walked away from the past. The future was mine to choose. I thought I'd lost everything, but in the end I found the one thing I always needed: myself. I stood on the cobblestone street in Italy, the air tingling with possibility. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for anyone but me. It was strange, unfamiliar, but in a way that made me feel alive, free. I had spent my life as a caretaker fixing everything for everyone. But here, in this foreign land, I wasn't fixing anything. I was simply existing. The last few months had been a whirlwind of change. I had started a new career. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I wasn't just doing things for others anymore. I was doing something for myself. I worked. I traveled. I laughed. And for the first time in ages, I felt the weight of the world slip off my shoulders. Grace had been my constant support, reminding me every day that I deserved this peace. She had watched me grow, and in turn, I had encouraged her to live for herself too. We had both come to understand that we didn't have to sacrifice our happiness for others. I was no longer just someone's mother or wife. I was Margaret, finally free. Sophia and Daniel were managing without me. It hadn't been easy for them, but they were getting by. Sophia, surprisingly, had stepped up in ways I didn't expect. Daniel had finally started taking responsibility, or so Emily told me. They were getting by, and while it wasn't perfect, it was progress. The pressure that had once consumed me, holding their world together, had been lifted. They could handle it now. Despite my newfound freedom, I still thought about them. I still worried about the kids. There were moments when I missed being needed, when the guilt threatened to pull me back into their world. But as the days went on, I knew in my heart that I couldn't return. The family needed to learn how to stand on its own without me constantly holding it together. I spent my days exploring, meeting people, rediscovering things I loved, things I had long forgotten. I walked the streets of Venice, feeling a sense of peace and adventure. I learned to smile without guilt, laugh without hesitation. For the first time in forever, I was enjoying life on my terms. But then, the message came. It was from Sophia. I've changed. Can we talk? My heart skipped. The words hit me in ways I wasn't prepared for. I had walked away from them, from everything. And for the first time I had felt truly free. Could I really go back to that life? Could I go back to being their emotional caretaker, their crutch? Was this a real change, or was it another attempt to pull me back into old habits? I took a deep breath, looking out at the city I had dreamed of visiting for years. The streets were alive, full of people living their lives, just as I had finally started to do. But now, the question lingered. Could I return to them? Could I face the family I had left behind, knowing they still needed me but knowing I was ready for more? My phone buzzed again. Another message. Another plea from Sophia. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The decision, this time, was mine. I could feel my pulse quicken as I considered the weight of my choice. My heart ached, but I knew what I had to do. I had spent so long being someone else's support system, always giving, always putting myself last. Now, for the first time in years, I was living. I had already made my decision. The future was mine to choose, and no matter how hard this moment was, I was ready to face it. I stood tall, confident in my choice, knowing that I wasn't turning back. This was the moment I had waited for, my life, my future, on my terms. And yet, as I put the phone down, I couldn't shake the thought, could I ever go back? For the first time I'm walking into the unknown, and I'm not afraid. The thought settled in my mind, as I stood in the airport terminal, the buzz of chatter around me only amplifying the quiet in my chest. My flight to Paris was about to board, and this time I wasn't looking back. This was my decision, my adventure, and it felt like the first real step toward the life I had spent years yearning for. The last few months had been a whirlwind of self-discovery. I had taken the first real job for myself, something that wasn't tied to anyone else's needs. It wasn't a huge career change, but it gave me a sense of purpose I had long forgotten. For the first time I was doing something for me. Grace had been my constant throughout it all, reminding me daily that I deserved this peace. I wasn't just someone's caretaker anymore. I was Margaret, living for herself. Sophia and Daniel were managing without me, and surprisingly, they were doing better than I expected. Sophia had stepped up and Daniel finally had taken responsibility. I was proud of them for figuring things out, but even more proud of myself for finally stepping away. The weight that had once held me down, my role as their emotional caretaker, was no longer mine to carry. As I boarded the plane, I couldn't help but think of the family I left behind. Despite my newfound freedom, part of me still worried about them, especially the kids. It was hard to turn my back on them completely. There were moments when guilt crept in, moments when I questioned whether I was making the right choice. But each time, I reminded myself that they had to learn to stand on their own, just as I had. During the flight, I allowed myself to reflect. I wasn't just traveling to a new city. I was starting a new life, no longer confined to the role of the fixer. I was free to explore the world on my own terms. I felt the excitement of possibilities that had always been out of reach. I didn't know what was next, but for the first time, that felt okay. It was a clean slate, and I was ready to write the next chapter. When the plane landed in Paris, I stepped off into the bustling city, full of life and potential. The air was different here, brisk, alive with energy. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to rush to meet someone else's expectations. I could breathe freely, and with that came a calm certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. The city felt like a mirror of my own journey, vibrant, filled with unknowns, yet full of promise. I wandered the streets, letting the sights, sounds, and smells soak into my skin. For the first time, I was truly living. There was no pressure to be anything but myself, no one to please, no roles to play, just me. Then a text message buzzed on my phone. It was from Sophia. "I've changed. Can we talk?" I paused, feeling the familiar tug of guilt. Could I really turn my back on them again? Could I ignore the call for help? But then I remembered why I had walked away to find myself, to live for me. The guilt wasn't mine to carry anymore. I had done enough for them. Now it was time to focus on what I needed. I put the phone down, standing in the middle of the busy Paris street. The weight of the decision lifted off me like a heavy coat I'd been carrying for years. I wasn't going back. This was my moment. The future stretched out before me wide open. No longer would I be defined by my family's needs, their expectations. It was time for me to be the architect of my own life. The road ahead was unknown, but I wasn't afraid. I was ready. For the first time, I'm walking into the unknown, and I'm not afraid. The thought settled deeply as I stood in the bustling airport terminal. My flight to Paris was boarding, and for the first time in my life, the future was mine to shape. The last few months had been a whirlwind of self-discovery. I had started a new job, something just for me, something that wasn't defined by the needs of others. It wasn't much, but it gave me a sense of purpose I had longed for. And now, here I was, heading into a new chapter, a chapter where I was the priority. Grace had been my rock throughout this journey, her constant encouragement, keeping me grounded. "You've earned this peace," she would say, and I finally understood what she meant. For so long I had been the one fixing things for everyone else, but now I was finally living for myself. I had always been someone's caretaker, but now, I was Margaret, just Margaret, without the burden of others' expectations. Sophia and Daniel were managing without me. Surprisingly, they were doing better than I expected. Through it all, I began to see how powerful it could be to reclaim your own life, to show that change is possible, no matter your age, no matter the circumstances. I wasn't just teaching these women to take control of their futures. I was showing them how I had taken control of mine. The work was fulfilling in a way I had never known before. It was no longer about helping others for the sake of others. It was about empowering them, and in doing so, I was empowering myself. Sophia had called again a few times, but this time, the messages were different. Her tone had shifted. "I see it now, Mom. I see how much you've done for us, and I know I have to step up. I'm sorry for everything." There was no guilt in her words anymore, just an acknowledgement that she had to take responsibility for her own life. The same message came from Daniel, who had finally started managing things without needing me to fix everything. They were becoming their own people, living more independent lives, and I was proud of them, but the real pride came from within. I wasn't the same person I had been. I was no longer the mother who dropped everything to pick up the pieces. I had grown into someone who knew her worth, someone who didn't need to shrink to make room for others. Then, one evening as I sat by the river near the Eiffel Tower, my phone buzzed. A new message from Emily. "My daughter, Mom, I'm proud of you. Keep going." I smiled, tears stinging my eyes. My daughter had always seen the strength in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself, and now here I was, living the life I had always imagined for myself. It was time to step further into the unknown. A new business venture had come my way, one that would challenge me in new ways, one that would allow me to share my journey of independence with the world. It was a risk, but it was mine to take. As I stood up to leave, I felt the world opening up before me. The future was mine to create, and I wasn't afraid anymore. This was just the beginning, and I was ready. I thought I'd lost everything, but what I gained was the one thing I'd been searching for all along, myself. The words echoed through my mind as I stood at the edge of the Seine, watching the water flow calmly beneath me. Paris stretched out in front of me, alive, vibrant, and full of endless possibilities. I had arrived, not just in a new city, but in a new chapter of my life. I wasn't the woman who had once lived for everyone else anymore. I was Margaret, living with purpose, and for the first time I was truly myself. Sophia and Daniel were managing, learning how to take care of things without me. They were both stronger than I had ever given them credit for, and it filled me with a quiet sense of peace to know they were doing well. Their lives were their own now, and so was mine. There were no more late-night calls, no more frantic pleas for help. I had stepped back, and in doing so I had not only allowed them to grow, but I had allowed myself to grow too. My independence had become a gift, one that had rippled through my family in ways I hadn't expected. I had always feared what would happen if I walked away, but now I could see the change in Sophia. Her messages had shifted from guilt-laden requests to genuine apologies and an acknowledgement of her own strength. "I see it now, Mom. I get why you had to go," she had written. It was as if in letting go, I had helped her realize her own worth, just as I was beginning to realize mine. But it wasn't just about them, it was about me. For years I had been the foundation that held everything together, sacrificing my own desires for the sake of others. I had believed my worth was tied to how much I could give, how much I could do. But now I understood the truth. My worth had always been within me, independent of anyone's need for me. In Paris I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known before. The streets felt like they were waiting for me, the cafes inviting, the art calling me to explore. I had begun to write again, a simple hobby that had once been drowned out by responsibility. And I had started a small venture, something that was mine, a small business focused on empowering women like me, showing them that change is possible at any age. It was the first time I wasn't working for survival or validation. I was doing something because it brought me grace, had been my constant throughout this. "You're on the right path, Margaret. I'm so proud of you," she would say, and it meant everything to me. She had walked her own path, and in her I had found a mirror to my own transformation. The family dynamic was shifting, and for the first time, it felt like it was balanced. They had adapted, and I had embraced my own life. Sophia had taken responsibility. Daniel was making decisions without me, and even the kids, though still adjusting, were learning how to function in a way that didn't rely on my constant intervention. They were growing. They were thriving. And I was thriving too. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I wasn't just taking care of others. I was building a life that was completely mine. As I made my way back to my apartment, the phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, Sophia's name. I had been bracing for this moment, knowing she would reach out again, but this time, the message was different. "I've changed. I see now how much you've done for us. Can we talk?" I paused, my heart skipping a beat. Could I go back to that life? Could I really leave behind the peace and independence I had fought for? Part of me ached for the family I had walked away from, but another part of me knew I couldn't go back. Not this time. The phone buzzed again, and I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had already walked away once, but now standing here, I knew it was time to let go for good. This was my moment to decide once and for all. I put the phone down, my thoughts swirling. I was on the edge of something new, something that could change everything. My life was my own now, and no matter what Sophia or anyone else said, I had built this for myself. The future was mine to shape. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. The choice was mine, and I was ready for whatever came next. I thought I'd lost everything, but what I gained was the one thing I'd been searching for all along myself. The words echoed in my mind as I stood by the window of my new apartment in Paris, watching the city stretch out beneath me. Paris felt like a dream, but it was real, my real. For the first time I wasn't living for anyone else. I wasn't a caretaker, a fix. I was just Margaret, standing on her own, living with purpose. Sophia and Daniel were managing. It wasn't perfect, but they were handling things without me. It filled me with a quiet peace, knowing that they were learning to stand on their own, but it didn't make me want to return. I wasn't the mother who dropped everything anymore. I had stepped back, and they had grown from it, just as I had. Grace, my constant support, reminded me, "You've earned this, Margaret. Look how far you've come." Her words became my mantra as I carved out a life for myself, away from the constant weight of family demands. I was creating something just for me. Paris had welcomed me with open arms. I spent my days wandering through the cobbled streets, exploring hidden gems, and rediscovering passions I had forgotten. I even started a small business, helping women like me. Women who had spent too long giving themselves away, who needed to know they could reclaim their independence at any stage in life. Sophia had changed too. Her messages had evolved from guilt to gratitude. "I see it now, Mom. I get it. I had to step up. I'm sorry for everything." She was starting to take responsibility for herself, just as I had begun to do. It wasn't just about them though. For years I had defined my worth by how much I could give. Now I understood that my value had always been within me, independent of anyone else's needs. I no longer needed to seek validation through sacrifice. I was thriving. My career, my newfound freedom, and my relationships were all blossoming. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living for the first time, for myself. But still the phone buzzed. Sophia's name. "I've changed. I see now how much you've done for us. Can we talk?" My heart skipped a beat, Could I return to that life? Could I slip back into the role of the emotional caretaker, the one who always gave everything without asking for anything in return? For a brief moment I considered it, but then I reminded myself of why I had left. I had walked away to live for myself, to build a life that wasn't defined by anyone's needs but my own. I had given enough. I put the phone down, letting the weight of the decision settle into me. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was my road. For the first time, I felt at peace with that. I was finally free. Sophia called again. Please, can we try again? I paused, the old guilt creeping in, but I shook it off. This time, I wasn't going back. They had grown. They had learned. And so had I. I stood up from the couch, looking out the window at the bustling streets below. The future, my future, was wide open. There was no more pressure, no more expectations, just me, free to create the life I had always dreamed of. The city seemed to embrace me, as I stepped into the street, the promise of new beginnings whispering in the air. As I walked, I felt an overwhelming sense of joy. I had made the right choice. This was my moment. I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was ready for it. For the first time, I was living for me. And that was just the beginning. The future is no longer something I fear. It's something I'm building for myself. The thought washed over me as I stepped off the plane in Europe. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and the bustling terminal felt alive with possibility. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of expectations pulling me down. I wasn't running toward something. I was walking toward the unknown, knowing it was mine to shape. I took a deep breath as I stepped into the vibrant city. It was a world filled with unknowns, but this time, I wasn't afraid of them. I had been afraid before, afraid of leaving, afraid of failure, afraid of losing myself. But now as I stood in this new place, I realized I had already found everything I needed. I had done the hard work of breaking free, and now I was ready to face whatever came next. I spent the first few days exploring, soaking in the history, the energy, and the possibility of it all. The city felt like a mirror of my own transformation, alive, filled with endless potential. I didn't need to rush. I wasn't tied to anyone's needs anymore. The pressure was gone. I began to consider new career opportunities, ones that felt aligned with who I had become. In Paris, it was like the world was offering me a canvas, blank and waiting for my time. I had built my independence. Now it was time to make something of it. Every conversation, every connection, felt like a piece of a puzzle clicking into place. The relationships I had built weren't weighed down by obligation anymore. I had found friends who admired the woman I had become, and I could feel myself expanding in ways I hadn't even thought possible. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't just someone's caretaker. I was Margaret, and I was in control of my future. Sophia and Daniel, too, were figuring things out without me. There was a quiet sense of peace in knowing they had found their footing. They weren't perfect, but they were growing, and that was all I had ever wanted for them. I wasn't needed in the same way anymore, and for the first time, I could step back without guilt. But still, a small part of me ached. I missed the kids, the joy of feeling needed, but I had given enough. I had been a mother, a caretaker for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. Now I had rediscovered it, and I wasn't about to give that up. I thought about the small business I had started, helping women who felt stuck, who needed the courage to break free from the roles that had confined them. It felt like the work I was meant to do. I had lived that journey, and now I was showing others that change was possible at any age, at any stage of life. There were moments of doubt. Of course, no change comes without its struggles. But each time I felt that hesitation creeping in, I reminded myself of all that I had accomplished. I was living not for anyone else, but for me. And for the first time, I knew that I was enough. I stood in front of a cafe one afternoon, watching people bustle in and out, laughter filling the air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was from Sophia. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You've inspired me." My heart swelled with pride. I had done it. I had given them the space to grow, just as I had grown. And now I was seeing it all come together. I walked into the cafe, the door chiming softly as I entered. The warm air enveloped me. As I took a seat at a window table, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. This was my moment, my future, my life. As I sat there, Watching the world go by, I realized something. I had reached the final step in my journey, the journey of reclaiming myself. There would be more challenges ahead, but I was no longer afraid. The unknown had become my ally. The future was mine to create, and I was ready. The life I had always wanted was unfolding before me, and I couldn't wait to see what came next.